Hi, it's Michael. Most of us, if not all of us, have fallen for the great motorcycle deception. We are tenaciously defending it in our own individual subjective ways, and some of us pay for it with their lives or with their health. And this great motorcycle deception is very can be very sublime, very tricky, and it talks to our subconscious mind. So most of the time we don't consciously even realize we are being programmed with hogwash, with bullshit, with nonsense. So in this light, no surprise that all motorcycle advertising is very cleverly designed to entice us to buy their product, no surprise, advertising, and is not integrous, it's not harmonious with positivity. All motorcycle journalists are great deceivers. Now, a motorcycle journalist may report on a motorcycle fairly truthfully in his or her subjective way, which is fine, but then at the end, they almost always leave one little part out. And that little part out changes the whole thing, because that little part contextualizes the whole thing, and this will be explained a little bit later. So no surprise, motorcycle journalists, so all reviewers who get bikes loaned by dealers and by motorcycle manufacturers, they have to report positively on the motorcycles, otherwise they wouldn't get any more loaners. No surprise there. So also no surprise, once you hear it, is that the great motorcycle deception is selling us bikes that we don't really need, and in many cases that we can't handle, and in a way we don't have enough energy to handle them safely and healthily. And this advertisement is so clever. They are using images and keywords that tug at our innocent heart, at our inner child, at our romantic part that loves freedom, that loves the outdoors, that loves the wind in the hair. So they cleverly design it for that. So using words like sublime, intelligent, extraordinary, or things like words like this that are positive words by themselves, but they are used in a context that tries to ensnare us to buy a bike that is bigger and supposedly better for us. And even the mosquitoes here are agreeing. They are trying to listen and have a bite at the same time. Anyway, and even I almost fell for it. Last year when I had the F750 GS, I was seriously considering buying the R1250R. And yes, I had extremely good reasons, excuses to go for it. And I was defending it, but fortunately, thank God, I was woken up from that false dream. So this motorcycle deception comes down to us being enticed to buy bigger bikes, bigger engine bikes, bigger than we need and bigger than are needed for the environment, for the roads, for the circumstances. And the bikes are being portrayed in a false manner. It is doctored truth. It sounds true and it can be defended successfully, and maybe it could even be defended successfully in a court of law. But in the court of God, which looks at the heart of things, which looks at the true intention, what can truly be handled, what is truly needed, it cannot be defended, and it is false, and it is negative, and it is not integrous, it is not positive. And we are being told that liter bikes are considered normal. Over 100 power is considered normal. And sometimes you read, if only the bike would have 10, 15 more horsepower, it would be perfect. Bullshit. You see this review about a new Ducati Multistrada, definitely beautiful bike. No doubts, it rides beautifully, it's designed for it. And you see a review for it, and a reviewer, which seems, for example, I'm thinking about one right now, which seems like a nice guy, and I do watch his reviews, and he sings praises about it and about Ducati. And it may all be kind of true, but at the end, as almost all the reviewers, leaves one thing out, and that is he doesn't mention that this is for a very specific, rare audience, so to speak, riders, for the experts, the 2% of the 2% of the top riders that can handle this bike sufficiently, not only at speed but also in low speed maneuvers, picking the bike up and so on. One of good indications if you can handle your bike is if you can make a consistent U-turn, both left and right, within the space of a normal country road or 3 parking spaces maximum. If you watched Jerry Palladino's riding like a pro videos, that's the idea. If you can't make a consistent U-turn with your bike within 3 parking spaces, the width of 3 parking spaces, or a normal narrowish country road, you are riding bike that is too big for you. No questions, no excuses. My bike has this rake, trail, whatever, and cannot make such a turn. Bullshit. Watch Jerry Palladino. Everybody can make it if the rider knows how to handle it. The only exceptions could be maybe some of the extreme choppers that have the front wheel half a kilometer ahead of the engine. But anyway, so because we are being enticed to buy bikes that are unnecessary for the conditions, then not only we part with more money than we need to, bikes being sold around $20,000 when it's not really necessary for us to ride such powerful bikes. How much horsepower are you using if you have a big bike? How much horsepower are you using during normal ride? 20% of it? 30%? Maybe not more. And so maybe you're rich and you don't care. So here comes the other part of it, and that is handling the heavy the weight of the bike during parking and picking it up. That's another thing. If you have to pick up the bike, even if you're using the proper technique, you're still straining your body. And I've been involved in the field of chiropractic in one way or another for a long time, and in the field of neuro-emotional technique, and I came to understand that even if you're using the proper technique, even that may be too much for your body, for your spine, depending on what state of health you are. So this affects our health, and of course there are riders who buy a bike that is too powerful for them, and they crash and they get seriously injured or killed. It's all around us. There is no question around it. So advertisers, the manufacturers lie to us through their advertising. The motor journalists lie to us by not properly contextualizing the reviews. Okay, so if you're truly honest, you admit that we have been, all of us, including you, deceived, very successfully deceived, even though some of us may have seen through this deception smokescreen eventually, but all of us have been deceived to some degree or another. So who is to blame? Do we blame the advertisers, the motorcycle manufacturers, the deceiving journalists? Whom do we blame? Who is to blame? Aha! There is nobody to blame. And this is important to realize. There is nobody to point the finger at, even though all these entities named, the manufacturers, the journalists, the advertisers, carry responsibility for all this. And us too for accepting the deception, because we do have the freedom to reject it, to refuse it. So this has come about because of the structure of the mind. As Dr. David Hawkins has explained, and this is extremely important to understand, I recommend not to skip this section, to listen to this. As Dr. David Hawkins has explained, the mind, the ego, is built for survival. And for survival, it is designed, is programmed for survival in this physical world. And for the survival, bigger and stronger is better. Bigger and stronger is better. Look at any animal, including humans, and tiny and weak don't do very well in this world. So whether you look at a wolf pack or a human pack, if you remember going to school, if there was a tiny, weak-looking, weak-minded kid, guaranteed the kid was picked on, bullied, maybe even beaten. Guaranteed, unless it was some extremely positive, illuminated, enlightened class. So, for us to survive and to thrive in the animal kingdom, in the animal world, bigger, stronger, more powerful is better. That's why we go for this anytime we want. It's built into our unconscious, subconscious, whatever conscious. It's built into us, into the ego. However, there is another part of us in this, and that is the spiritual part, the spirit part. Whether you admit it or not, we do have it, And that gives us the freedom and the insight to realize this, to see through it, and to reject it. It has its point, it has its benefit for survival, but up to a point. There comes a certain level, certain point where it needs to be dropped, and we need to use intelligence rather than bigger, better, stronger. Okay? So it is nobody's fault. It's just the setup of this world that has been going on for billions of years, and the ego, the mind, including the human mind, is a product of it. So if you realize it, you can transcend it, and then you can make more intelligent choices. There is a good number of reviewers on YouTube, including yours truly, that agree that about the happy medium range for a motorcycle for normal roads in horsepower is around 40-45 horsepower, and that way the motorcycle is not too heavy if it's well designed, and it has plenty of power for normal road use. And if you have to pick it up, it doesn't strain the body too much. And so you may think, so whatever, you may say whatever you want, that's your subjective view. And I love my 1.2 liter, 1.4 liter engine bike with 140 horsepower. I can handle it fine, so that's none of your business. Fine, that's good. But the issue with this is because the whole motorcycle scene has now shifted to these bigger bikes, it's pretty much impossible to buy a smaller engine bike, something around between 300 and 500 cc, that is of good quality, and that is ergonomic and spacious enough to take a normal size rider and luggage. It's almost impossible. It pretty much doesn't exist. Maybe it could be argued that KTM with the Adventure 390 comes the closest, but that bike is made in India with what seems like iffy reliability, dependability. So if the manufacturers would spend enough money on research and development of smaller engine bikes, and that would be still suitable for decent size riders, and at the same time would still make these big powerful bikes, that would be fine. That way everybody could be satisfied. But this way everything is shifted up to the big bikes, and the lower bikes are being given kind of cold nose. Yeah, you can buy 300cc bikes, 400cc bikes, but they are greatly compromised because nobody is willing to pay more money for these bikes. No wonder, since everybody is being upsold to the big bikes and everybody buys it. So all the big money heads for the big bikes, and there is nothing really left for the smaller bikes. And that is not positive, that is not congruent with the divine, because then it serves only a specific market and it pushes people into it. So nowadays, if you want a bike that is comfortable and is nicely equipped, then pretty much you have to go for a big heavy bike, or you can buy a small bike and you can spend a fortune upgrading it, and even then you still don't get the ergonomics and spaciousness that you would wish to have, and that is not right, so to speak. Also, just to add on a personal subjective note, I am here on an extreme bike. I am in a national park in Bavaria, in Germany right now. I am on a motorcycle road trip, and I am here on an extreme bike. And the bike is extreme because it has all of 13 horsepower. And you know what? I've ridden on all sorts of roads, and the 13 horsepower is on the boundary of being practical. That's why I call it extreme. It's on the low end, but it's still doable. On all these roads that I've been riding here to get here, through Germany, through the Czech Republic, hundreds of kilometers I've covered so far, I have traveled the same speeds as all the liter bikes that I saw that were passing in the opposite direction, or that I was passing. All of them the same speeds, because the speed limits are 50 kilometers per hour in the village or in the town, and 80 to 100 kilometers per hour on the country roads, and 130 kilometers per hour on the motorways. Now, I can go on the motorways, but of course I cannot go 130 kilometers per hour. I can go 100 kilometers per hour, but I can go on the motorway. So my point is, with 13 horsepower, I was able to get here, okay, maybe 10 minutes later than the guys on the liter bikes. So it's not that I would recommend 13 horsepower motorcycles. I don't. I would recommend minimum 30 horsepower motorcycles. That's what I have in Toronto, where my permanent residence is, where I live, and where it's perfectly enough. So from there up, I would recommend. But the point again is that it is doable, and I'm going the same speed as they are going. Yes, I cannot pass that fast, but so far I haven't had to, and in many cases I rode even slower than the speed limit because I enjoyed the breathtaking views along the road. So that's about it for this talk. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below the video, and I wish you happy and healthy motorcycling. Oh, by the way, one thing came to my head is, if you want to find out if you're riding the right motorcycle for you or not, there is a way to find out, and the way is through muscle strength testing through applied kinesiology. That is best provided by neuro-emotional technique practitioners, NET practitioners. You can go to the website netmindbody.com, and you can find your practitioners there. There is a link, practitioner finder, or you can use muscle strength testing yourself, as described in the books by Dr. David Hawkins. And don't underestimate it. You can be cocksure you have the right bike for you, and when you check it with your intuition, with muscle strength testing, you may get a completely different answer. You may be sitting on a wrong bike, and the right bike for you is maybe hidden from your view right now. So it is very well to test it, to check it, even if you would have to travel a longer distance. So this is really all.